Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Out of the Ice podcast.
As better known as the podcast where we seem to have just been in a trend of watching superhero movies.
There's a lot of them.
This is a superhero podcast now, I guess.
Don't tempt me. There's a lot of them, and they've been increasingly important in the past, 10, 20 years.
And so we've talked about this a little bit here, where I've only really started liking superhero movies around the time the MCU was just really kind of getting its thing together. I hopped in when Avengers got on Netflix and ended up watching all the movies. Well, there was another superhero movie that was going on in the background of my childhood. I've heard rumblings and this was so good, it was so good, but child me was I don't care. But according to Scott, this is the movie that pretty much made the MCU even happen in the first place.
In a large part. It was this and the X-Men movies. Mm-hmm. And then some stuff that DC was doing. I believe Batman Begins was around the same time as Spider-Man 2. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's true. At least in my head, that feels around the same time. But yeah, because before that, there had been other attempts. And before this, I believe the most successful attempt at a Marvel property being done on screen was the Incredible Hulk live-action TV show.
Okay.
With Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. Which, interesting enough, Lou Ferrigno was a bodybuilder and all this stuff. And he played the Hulk, mm-hmm. but he didn't play Banner.
Oh, okay.
Bill Bixby played Banner.
Okay, I mean...
Yeah. But it's still pretty cool because what they would do is they would have Bill Bixby get angry and they would zoom into his face and they'd show that he suddenly has green eyes.
Okay.
And then it would they'd almost handle it like a werewolf transformation where they would focus on different parts of his body turning into the Hulk.
Because they're not the same guy.
Yeah.
So
and then
they kind of had to be creative with that, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. And I just assumed that it was probably really fun for Lou Ferrigno because he got to tear the shit out of some clothes every episode. Just Gah!
Yeah.
And as far as I remember, Hulk never talked in those things. He barely even grunted. He was just a savage monster.
Huh.
But he didn't attack innocents. At least I don't remember him ever doing that in the episodes I've seen. Also, fun fact about that show before we go to what this is leading to. In the show, his name is David Banner instead of Bruce Banner because the studio thought that if he was named Bruce Banner, everyone would assume he was gay.
What?
Yeah, they assumed that the name Bruce was too gay.
I mean, this movie also made a gay joke, and I just kind of went,
It did.
Ooh, yeah.
There was only one, and honestly, the way it did it wasn't that, it wasn't that big of an oof. It was just two wrestlers fucking with each other.
Yeah.
That, I feel like at that point...
And
because that's such a testosterone... Well, there are lady wrestlers, too, but, it's such a, strength thing when it comes to the male wrestlers, mm-hmm. that I feel like that's a valid insult to try to get at people's goat.
Yeah, but,
especially if you're playing the heel.
And again, I'm gonna go on a completely random tangent here, but that was 20-something years ago that for the movie that we're talking about.
Yeah, it was 2001. But anyway, what I was going to say about the Marvel properties is that Spider-Man has been tried in live action a surprisingly lot. There was a Japanese show made by the people who would later make Super Sentai.
Oh my!
Which would then be localized into Power Rangers. Spider-Man has a mech in that.
Neat.
It's literally a flying fortress that turns into a giant robot. It's called Leopardon, which is spelled Leopardon, but they pronounce it Leopardon. In fact, they don't even pronounce Spider-Man as Spider-Man. They pronounce it as Supaidaman. But in that one, Spider-Man is an alien. Like there's a alien spider from the planet Spider, and he like transfers his alien powers to the Peter Parker stand-in, who's not called Peter Parker. I forget what he's called. For some reason, Ryuji is what's in my head. I don't think that's right. But, and his dad is like a scientist, I believe. And then some bad aliens, again, because this is made by the guys who make Power Rangers, some bad aliens show up, kill the Peter Parker stand-in's dad, and then now the guy who has the Spider-Man powers now. And also, like, I think he says he's like an emissary of hell, is like his thing. It's like, I am the emissary of hell, Spider-Man.
Come on, America, give Spidey his mech.
They've put it in the comics.
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
in Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon, that version of Spider-Man teams up with a bunch of other multi-dimensional Spider-Mans. Anyway, it left an impact, clearly. That and that version of Spider-Man is a pop culture thing. Looking back on it now, though, not great, very cheesy, and not very Spider-Man-esque. However, it's better than the American attempt. Editor Scott here. It's not that the American ones are exactly awful, they're just kind of boring. In the 70s, I believe,
Okay.
that got two, and this was during the time of, like, they made the Incredible Hulk TV show, and then they made a bunch of other TV movies kind of as, like, tester pilots to see if other things could get those shows, right? Mm-hmm. None of them worked.
Oh.
There was a Doctor Strange one that was just so fucking bad.
Oh.
There was 2 Captain America movies that are absolutely great, and if you tell me they're not, you're lying.
He showed me the first one at some point, and good lord, that was hot garbage.
Did I?
Yes.
Did I actually show you that?
Yes.
The one with Red Brown where the shield is clear?
Yes, it was so
What do you
bad.
mean hot garbage? That thing's so good. It's so awful.
It's no.
And great.
Oh god.
He fights people in a fucking meat shop and like throws giant hawks of steak at them.
It was bad.
He's not in costume until the last like 10 minutes.
It's so bad.
The main climax is, oh, hope this guy's heart doesn't stop because it's on a dead man switch. And again, the shield, instead of having white, it's clear where it's supposed to be white. And then the star is blue and surrounded by clear. Now, the reason for that is actually kind of interesting because he puts it on his bike and it becomes the windshield. That's kind of a neat idea, honestly.
Yeah.
I like that idea. However, it's also clearly made of plastic.
Yeah, it basically looked like
clearly made of plastic.
It literally just looks
wobbles,
like a frisbee.
It wobbles like it's made of plastic. And they don't even replace the sound in ADR. So when it hits people, it still just goes dunk. But they react to it like they're being hit by a steel beam. I love it. It's so fucking stupid. The second one, Death Too Soon, is actually pretty decent.
Okay.
And we will watch that. Actually, we'll probably do a double feature because it's been a while since you've seen that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, it's been at least a few years. I think we watched it, like, the first time I visited your apartment.
Yeah.
Like, your old apartment.
But anyway, yeah, the ones that were made in America, the Spider-Man movies, going back to that, the TV movies, there was no way to do it on a TV budget. There was barely a way to do it on a huge movie budget in live action. Like, animation, there was the 60s animated show, which today, cheesy as shit, horribly memeable. But it, like, ran for a long goddamn time. And then there was an animated show in the 80s that then morphed into a sequel series. There was the 80s Spider-Man animated show, then Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, then Spider-Man the Animated Series from the 90s, which ran a long time. I think it had 4 seasons.
Oh.
And these were like 90s Fox Kids syndication seasons. So like each season is like fucking 30 episodes.
Damn.
It's a shit ton of content. Was it 3 seasons or 4? Either way, they were supposed to have one more season than they had, which means the whole show ends on a huge fucking cliffhanger.
Oh, no.
And I hate it, because I actually really loved whoever was voicing Peter Parker and Spider-Man on that. And the narrator was Stan Lee.
Oh, my heart.
He even appears in an episode as himself, talking to Spider-Man like, whoa, that's weird. How are you real?
Oh my god, I love that.
But yeah, so those two movies, not great. In fact, there might have even been 3. Then there was a Turkish movie where it was like Turkish Captain America and Turkish Batman versus Turkish Spider-Man.
What?
Where Spider-Man was the bad guy. He was like a gangster.
I feel like this is like one of those, like, you ever see like in the dollar bin of like a kids section, like just like the knockoff movies?
Oh yeah.
That feels like
Ratatouille.
Yeah, this feels like you grabbed a knockoff movie.
Oh, they are. Yeah, they absolutely are. But yeah, then after that, the American live-action Spider-Man that actually had some modicum of success was not on a purely Spider-Man show. It was on a Sesame Street competitor.
What?
You ever heard of the Electric Company?
We're gonna turn it on. We're gonna bring you the power. We're gonna light up the dark of night like the brightest day in a whole new way.
No, I have not.
It was an educational show. Mm-hmm. It was essentially like Sesame Street for slightly older kids. Like, 'cause Sesame Street is like preschool,
Yeah, but
like infancy to preschool.
It's like kind of an educational show, but a little bit
Edutainment, yeah.
Okay.
But it was one of the good ones. It essentially, I've shown you All That. Right?
Yes.
It's essentially kind of all that, but there's also education lessons. Like, it's a bunch of skits.
Okay.
Like educational SNL. And the only black mark about it is that Bill Cosby was in it.
Oof.
And to be fair, I believe this was him coming in right hot off the heels of Fat Al. Like Fat Albert.
Yeah.
Hey. I believe he was in it. Unless I'm wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure Bill Cosby was on Electric Company at some point. But anyway, there were Spider-Man segments of the Electric Company. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting. It's actually a really interesting idea for doing edutainment. Because, like, Spider-Man, in the mainstream audience, has always been expressly popular. Hey everyone, Scott in the editing bay here. I realized that we never really got back to the Spider-Man Electric Company segments after we went on a tangent that I unfortunately had to edit out because this podcast is long enough already. The reason that they had Spider-Man in the show was because he was from a comic book, which means they had a reason to have a character who only spoke in speech bubbles. He, in the segments, never actually talked. He would just kind of gesture, and then a speech bubble would appear over his head. So it was a way to get kids to practice reading. Always thought that was kind of clever. All right, here's the theme from that segment of Spider-Man and the Electric Company to get you back into the podcast proper. But anyway, this is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
So for this Spider-Man, which I
Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi,
James Franco. To my surprise, I'm like, wait, what?
Oh yeah, James Franco is the best.
So
he's the best in these movies, especially 3.
So I knew about I knew about this. I knew what this movie was. I remember it being a huge deal when I was growing up, but I didn't like superhero movies. I never saw it. All I know really about this trilogy of Spider-Man movies is that the third one, I remember the middle school band room getting into a heated argument about the third one, about whether it was good or not. Mm-hmm. And then funny enough, about a year ago or so, another argument between coworkers. One guy saying that Tobey Maguire was cuter, and the girl saying that Tom Holland is cuter.
Tom Holland's cuter. But anyway.
100%.
Yeah, Tobey Maguire makes an excellent Peter Parker, but he's not as adorable as Spoiler McSpoilerton. But anyway, Sam Raimi, the guy who directed it, and is also the creator of Evil Dead, which you can kind of see in some parts of this movie, when it decides to get scary.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, like the freaking Jekyll and Hyde mirror scene with the Goblin, or the transformation scenes for both Peter and Norman.
Or when when the robber was trying to get out of that
Yeah,
building,
yeah.
and it was
That is my favorite scene of that movie. It is so fucking good. And it's only heightened in my memory by the fact that I remember playing that scene in the fucking PlayStation game.
oh
And like just, which funny enough, in the game's interpretation of that, the carjacker, the random carjacker, had a whole group of henchmen, just a whole group of them.
like even though it was just that single dude in that
Yeah.
scene. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, you like have to fight like at least 20 guys.
What? For one carjacking?
They had to make a level out of it.
You know what? I get
And it was a
it.
tutorial level. By the way, all 3 of the Sam Raimi tie-in games are narrated by Bruce Campbell. And I love that so much. Literally the tutorial level that's like in a virtual thing and all this stuff for the first game, Bruce Campbell is tutorialing you, but he doesn't give a shit, and he's just like, hold on, I'm gonna go get a sandwich. And then the next time you hit a hint block, he's like, good sandwich. Anyway, I love it so much.
How well does Spider-Man 2 hold up as a game? Or
Amazing.
really?
Here's the thing. It's obviously dated. It doesn't feel like it does in my memory anymore.
Okay.
But there's a reason they went back to that when designing the PS4 game.
Okay.
'Cause-
that sounds kind of amazing, and I kind of want to play a little bit of that
Mm-hmm.
now.
But yeah, Sam Raimi is a huge Spider-Man fan as well, or at least was. I don't know if he still is, but I know as a kid he grew up reading the comics. The early comics, the ones from the 60s. Which is why this feels so unique. This is not based on the comics that were coming out at the time. This is based on the world of the 60s Spider-Man comics. You know, it's a little bit more innocent, a little bit more cheesy, but it's intentionally cheesy. But yeah, so that's who was directing this. And I remember a lot of people were very unsure about this movie. Because, like, again, this was early 2000s. It was going to be really fucking hard to put Spider-Man in live action. You know, like, that's a lot of work. Spider-Man moves in very gymnastic ways, like leaps around and swings on webs and is constantly doing this crazy shit.
All the logistics of that had to have been insane.
A lot of wire work. Like, I honestly feel like of the Marvel properties, this is really kind of the biggest equivalent to the Christopher Reeve Superman. You know, where, like, it was such an undertaking in making that character on the big screen seem real that part of its advertising was, you will believe a man can fly.
Huh.
Like, and this one could have been, you will believe a man can swing on a web. Like,
I mean, because honestly, like, it didn't when we were watching it, I didn't think it looked that bad. Like, I didn't go. There were like very few moments where I'm like, that's not really happening.
yeah, there's some that I noticed.
You also have better trained eyes for that, but
Yeah, like, some of it looked fake, but it looked like a PS3 game fake, unlike, you know, like a PS1 cutscene or anything. It looked fine. It's just obvious that it wasn't there. And honestly, I've seen shit like that in current movies. Go back to Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Those helicarriers need a touch-up.
Yeah, I can't wait to go back to those movies to see, like, because I thought, like, oh my god, this is so awesome. Like, when I first,
Sometimes they look fine,
yeah.
but other times I'm just like, ooh, that's not there. And I don't know. I feel like when it comes to movies like that, especially for the MCU, I don't know. When it comes to the Blu-ray, maybe they should, like, do touch-ups. You
Yeah.
know, like, if something doesn't look good anymore, touch it up, do it again, and give it more render time. You know, you've got the time while it's in theaters. It's a Marvel movie. They're always going to stay in the theater for, like, at least a month. Give it a month of render time. Really work those servers. But yeah, like, it is a very impressive movie for 2001. And you know it's 2001, and that was in production before 2001, because there's a scene where the Twin Towers are reflecting in Peter's eyes.
Yeah.
Oof.
That's unfortunate.
Retroactive oof. Also, one of the original teaser trailers had a helicopter webbed up in a giant web in between the Twin Towers.
Yee.
Big yikes. However, in my opinion, Spider-Man is not the star of this movie.
No.
No. Willem Dafoe is the star of this movie.
Now, I'm terrible at actors.
Norman.
Yes, absolutely, he was. He was the star of the show.
Dafoe. Oh, so good.
Because, like, again...
This is the shit that when they were making the live-action Death Note on Netflix, this is why everybody was like, get Willem Dafoe to play the demon guy.
Oh, no.
Get him to play Ryuk.
I just remembered I watched that. Why did I do that?
But hey, Willem Dafoe was great as the demon guy, right? This is why. He was basically just taking fucking Green Goblin acting out of the box, dusting it off a little bit. His heart, Norman. First you attack the heart. Godspeed, Spider-Man.
It was so cartoon villainy, and I
love
loved
it.
it. It was so good.
Back to and also, like, it's not just that, but when he's Norman and he's like still not come to grips with the fact that he is the Green Goblin, he's still like kind of teetering between insane and sane. He has moments where he seems legitimately afraid of what is happening to him.
Yeah, he seems terrified of himself at some points.
Yeah, like, doesn't really remember, or is at least repressing what he did, you know, like, because Green Goblin makes the assertion that he's known the whole time. But Norman seems genuinely surprised when this shit happens.
Yeah.
Like, so either he's immediately repressing it, or most of him really doesn't remember.
Yeah, because I don't think it was ever, like, super clear if it was one way or the other.
No, I think it's supposed to be left as ambiguous about how much Norman is responsible for his downfall. Like, he's obviously responsible for it. He's the one who decides to become a human guinea pig. But, like, some part of it is the serum. And it's kind of supposed to be, you know, until the end of the movie, up in the air about, can this version of Norman be saved?
Yeah.
Comic book Norman, there was never any question of that. He was a dirty, rotten bastard even before the serum. He was always a dirty, rotten bastard. It was never going to be anything other than a dirty, rotten bastard.
Because at least, like, the Norman in the movie, like, didn't seem like the worst guy. Shitty dad, but not, like, the absolute worst.
Yeah. And not even, like, intentionally shitty dad. Like, he clearly cared about Harry in some level. Mm-hmm. But, like, to the point where, you know, he didn't want Harry to know that he was the Green Goblin.
Yeah.
But, like, although I guess that could have been a pride thing. I don't know. But, still, though, like, that is the best acting in this movie.
Because, like, again, Tobey Maguire, like, he had his moments, but, like, a lot of, like, his regular old, like, I'm just Peter Parker right now scenes, he kind of felt like a cardboard stand-in, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I... Again, that's kind of because...
Spraying on a little bit of, like, oh, I'm socially awkward, but not...
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm like, there's... And I'm comparing it to Tom Holland, where it's hard to not do that, but that was my introduction to Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Where Tom Holland just oozes, like, charisma and likability.
Also, to be fair, the MCU has Disney money.
That's also very true.
This one had early 2000s Sony money.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like Columbia Pictures and stuff like that. So not as good.
Yeah,
but still,
I'm
like,
try to
they
separate
clearly
it more.
put a lot of money into it. Mm-hmm. And it's not like the acting is ever bad.
No.
Like, hokey sometimes, cheesy sometimes, but for the most part, that seems intentional. Or at the very least, it reads as intentional when you're looking at it. I mean, shit, this is the movie where they literally have somebody doing a folksy song that leads into Here Comes the Spider-Man.
That was really funny.
Also, secondary best actor in this movie is J.K. Simmons as JJ.
JJ.
Jonah.
Oh my god.
Daily Bugle.
Yes,
J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, he was great. Like that honestly, like that's the exact image of what I had for him.
That's because it is the exact image of what he is. That is exactly what he is in the comics. There's a reason they brought him back for the MCU. You cannot have a better Jonah. Like, voice actor, sure, but like even now that J.K. Simmons is like doesn't have the hair, is clearly older, now he just looks like an aged Jonah. Like, he doesn't look comic accurate anymore because it's been fucking 20 years.
But like even appearance-wise, like putting that aside, like the way like he portrayed him, like it was just down accurate to sleazy.
Like, that even sounds like Jonah. Like, when I was a kid reading Spider-Man comics, he sounded like that. You know, in the 60s show, he sounded like that, kind of. Like, a little bit different because 60s voices, but he sounded like that. In the 90s show that came out before these movies, he sounded like that. It's actually kind of amazing how Jonah is such a fucking huge personality in the pages that everybody just kind of instantly got it. Like, they're just like, yes, this is exactly how he sounds, exactly how he talks. Like, you know, like, he's just the guy who says, "Get me pictures of Spider-Man!" Like, you know? And just the thing where, like, just immediately it's just like, "What are you doing? Get out of here. You're fired. No, come back here."
I know.
Come back here. You're rehired. I'll give you $300.
I loved that.
And he's kind of one of the more, like, for being such a side character in this movie, he has some complexity because he's clearly a shitheel when it comes to being head of the Daily Bugle. He very much understands that he doesn't have the full story of Spider-Man and doesn't care. Like, Peter literally tells him that's slander, and his thing is like, "No, it's not. I believe this to be true. This is the facts as I know them." He goes, "No, it's not. It's libel." Like, in print, it's libel. And he seems proud of it.
Yeah.
He's
embracing.
The only thing that they kind of do to justify it is it's like, well, it seems like he was helping those people. Then why does he wear a mask?
Yeah. So at first, like going into this movie, we see Peter chasing after the school bus. I'm like, oh great, we're back to high school. But they don't dwell on that for too long, so that was kind of nice. We kind of get the gist of like, okay, Peter is a loser, he's a nerd, crushing on a girl next door, yada yada yada. Yeah, I just like with the whole school trip thing. It's like, okay, we're learning about all these spiders. And, like we have all this experimental shit going on in this place. Where did that spider come from? Well, how did it escape?
Well, they mentioned that he escaped.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, it's like,
Missed
oh, we have 14 spiders. 13. Excuse me? 13. One's missing. And the scientist, instead of going, "Fuck," and like getting the kids out of there and locking the place down, is just like, "Oh, they must be testing that one." Like,
yeah, okay.
That will become a running theme in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, that scientists are just irresponsible as shit.
It's kind of like the mentality, like the who cares?
Yeah, it's just like, it's probably a bird. It'll fly away.
Here's a bright idea. Why don't you make sure it's a bird before you mutate the crap out of something just because you were too lazy to safely run this nighttime sand mutation experiment?
But yeah, like, that's also very different than how he got the powers in the comics. It's actually closer to the Ultimate comics, where it was a genetically altered spider. I guess technically it was a genetically altered spider in the original comics, but that's not how they described it. They described it as an irradiated spider. Essentially, there's this big old science beam maker. I forget what it's called. It has a name. In fact, actually, hold on. Scott gets up, finds the comic, and leafs through it until finding the name of the device. The Isotope Genome Accelerator. That's what it's called in the comics. It's this big old science gun. It literally if any of you are Disney Parks fans, it looks like the fucking loading area from Miracles from Molecules. But it's essentially a big old science beam, and I forget what it's actually supposed to do, because I think they've said it does basically whatever the fuck the writers need it to, but it's a big old science MacGuffin. But in this test that Peter goes to, as like a part of a science exhibit, yeah, like it wasn't even like a school trip, it was like an extracurricular thing that he was doing because he's such a big fucking nerd. But like a spider on a thread drops down into the beam, gets irradiated, falls onto Peter's hand, bites him, and transfers his powers to him before dying.
I like just how quickly like Peter just skirts up back to his room coming back from the trip.
Oh yeah, he literally is just like, I don't feel good. Goodbye. Tries to get onto the bed, falls onto the floor.
I'm like, oh no.
And that's where you get a little bit of the horror tinges because there's just skulls flashing
I'm surprised that
and spiders.
May didn't go and check on him at all.
Neither of them did.
Yeah.
They just were like, teenagers.
And like at the same time we just cut to Norman becoming the guinea pig, as you said.
Which, funny enough, the scientist who's with him is called Strom, which is a reference to the comic book partner that Osborn had at Oscorp, named Dr. Strom, who in the comics would later become a villain himself.
So Peter wakes up buff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was some just kind of like, whoa, I can do all this shit. And a scene that you pointed out, and I'm like, you know what, that is pretty cool. Peter defends himself against Flash.
Yeah.
And kicks his ass. And I was
And
expecting...
MJ is not immediately won over by that.
Yeah, I'm expecting, like, everybody around him to go like, whoa, hell yeah! And everyone's just like,
What the fuck?
What the fuck, Peter?
Yeah.
What the hell? What?
What? First off, how? Second off, what? Also, everybody in that school should be able to figure out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He literally, like, everyone saw him dragging a lunch tray behind him connected to a web.
Yeah.
Everyone in that school should know who he is. Like, that happens, and then literally, like, a couple nights later, a fucking person named Spider-Man shows up and kills the mugger of Uncle Ben. Come on.
Like, the fact that the police haven't even, like...
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, the police, it's a little bit more understandable because, unlike in the comics where Peter finds out about it because it wasn't actually a carjacker, it was a home invader.
Okay.
And he invaded the Parker home and shot Ben dead in his own home.
Oh,
and
no.
Peter finds out because the police are surrounding his house.
Okay.
And so, like, the fact that mugger suddenly, comes up and is like, oh, God, Spider-Man, whoa. And it's like, wait a minute, you're the guy who killed that Ben Parker guy. Suddenly, there's a Spider-Man guy. And his nephew just ran off into the back alleys as soon as he found out Uncle Ben was dead. I need a sandwich. But, like, yeah, no, the fact that, like, nobody really got Peter's, name or stuff like that. He just said, that's my uncle. Like, which, yeah, sure, put two and two together eventually when the obituary comes out, but a lot of people probably didn't even know Ben's name. It's not like while he's still there gasping for breath, they're going to go like, hold on, let me check your wallet for your ID. Although, really, they weren't doing anything to help him. They put like a fucking jacket on the ground for him to use as a pillow. Nobody was like, there were no paramedic. There was like a cop or a fireman or something there responding to it, but no paramedics trying to help or get him into a gurney or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like in the comics, by the time the police got there, Ben was already dead. But in here, like Ben's still gasping for breath. Like what the help him? Somebody get a fucking thing. Put pressure on the wound.
While we're still on the topic of Uncle Ben, I'm gonna backpedal a little bit.
Uncle Ben's great.
That really tug at the heartstrings, like that last scene before he died.
Peter.
Oh God, I'm like, I'm so sad. Like, they did that really effectively.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly what May said in a later scene, but like
He loved you.
Yeah,
And you
like,
loved him.
and that just like made me think about like it's like even if you like fight with someone like maybe and you know some shit happens, if like you know you really love if you really love that person, like they already knew that even if
Yeah.
the last interaction was not a positive one.
If they hadn't done the homemade costume like that in the Sam Raimi movie, I don't think it would have been as cool when they did a homemade costume in MCU.
You think?
Because that's not from the comics. The comics,
Oh.
he immediately makes the refined suit.
Oh. And Bruce gets to basically name drop the Amazing Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty neat. You know, he beats up a wrestler, gets a gay joke, and then we lead up to...
Not just any wrestler. He beats up Macho Man Randy Savage. Randy Savage is who is in the Spider-Man movie, and he's playing an alternate character. He's not playing Randy Savage. He's not playing Macho Man. He's playing Bonesaw. Bonesaw is ready, which is not who Spider-Man fought in the comics. He fought a person called Crusher Hogan. I'm guessing that Randy Savage didn't want to play a character called Hogan.
You know what? Yeah, that's fair.
Probably would not sit well with branding.
No. But Bonesaw was a fun name.
Yeah, Bonesaw is great. Oh yeah, I got you for 3 minutes. And he holds 3 with his pinky, ring, and middle finger.
Yeah, you're...
Who does that?
Yeah, you're fixated on that for like a solid minute or two.
Who
when we were
does that?
watching that?
I'm not gonna arc with the guy. Like, I hold nothing against Randy Savage. He sacrificed himself so that the world didn't end in 2012. But yeah, so Spider-Man fights Bonesaw, but he's not Spider-Man at the start. Peter wanted to be called the Human Spider. But luckily, Bruce
Bruce
Campbell is there and is like, that name sucks. The Amazing Spider-Man.
I love that. And Peter
Yeah.
was like, hey, wait a second.
He
that's
got
not...
my name wrong.
Yeah. Get out there, kid. Whoosh.
But also, something kind of funny is that in going up against Bonesaw, who is, you know, like this underground wrestler, you know, like thing, and being in a cage match and all this stuff, he's going against an extreme personality, which lets Peter then fire back and get that Spider-Man personality started, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, what's the oh, nice costume. Did your husband make it?
Oh, that's right, because I remember you've mentioned before, Peter Parker and Spider-Man are almost a little separate because Spider-Man's a lot quippier and...
Spider-Man, essentially when Peter is Spider-Man, he is talking without any limits on his confidence or witticisms. Mm-hmm. You know, like, he doesn't have to be polite because he's punching the people who he's talking to in the face, and they're bad people.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be polite. Anything he thinks about them, even if it's mean, he can just fucking say.
Okay.
And, like, even he'll be like, also, part of it is a defense mechanism. He's trying to laugh away the fear, like, by entertaining himself by making fun of the bad guy. Also, it's a good strategy because if the bad guy is upset because he's being made fun of, he's gonna get sloppy. Mm-hmm. And Peter's smart enough to know that. And also, it's part of Spider-Man's brand at this point. Literally in comics, he's like, hey, do you think I always want to do jokes? It's part of who I am now, man. Like, people expect it. You think I want to upset the onlookers? There might be tourists there. Which, again, gets wrapped up and becomes part of the joke.
Oh, God.
His webs thwip, his mouth quip.
I'm trying to remember, okay.
After that, he defeats Bonesaw in 1 minute.
No, it was 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, 2 minutes. Even better. He's supposed to be in there for 3 minutes, knocks out Bonesaw in 2 minutes, and thus the payment manager shorts him. Is like, oh yeah, like, you were supposed to be in there for 3 minutes. You only were in there for 2. So this is the amount for 2 minutes.
And you only
but
got
it's
like
$100. The prize money was supposed to be $3,000, which comes to $1,000 a minute that you survive Bonesaw. you would think that there would also be an additional prize for if you beat Bonesaw, like, because that's the challenge. You know, like, make that something else. But you would think for 2 minutes out of 3, you'd get $2,000. And I don't even think at that point that anybody would argue with you. I think most people would be like, that's fair. Like, yeah, it did say 3 minutes, you know? But, so the guy horribly shorts him and then immediately gets robbed. And, you know, and so, like, the guy's running down the thing with the money, and Peter's literally just like, fucking whatever, lets him go into the elevator, and the guy's like, well, you got away with my money. And meanwhile, the guy had said to Peter, you know, it's like, I need that money. He said, remind me how that's my problem, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or I forgot the part where that's my problem. And so Peter throws that back in his face.
Yeah, that was so good.
Yeah, but unfortunately, this is a comic book, and great power must come with great responsibility, and for Peter to learn that, Uncle Ben got shot.
Aww.
So, that sucks.
Poor Uncle Ben.
Yeah, so, at that point, Peter overhears something on the cop radio saying that they've got the carjacker going down, I think, 5th Avenue or whatever. And so Peter literally just walks away, leaves Ben's body on the sidewalk. Oof.
Yeah.
And runs down an alleyway, suits up while he's running, and just, like, vengefully, like, climbs up a building and starts chasing after the guy. You know, chases him into, like, an abandoned warehouse on a wharf, and this shot is kind of shot from the bad guy's perspective, where he's in a dark thing, he's clearly scared and shaken, and, like, you just see Spider-Man, like, in the background, or, like, in shadows, and, you know, or, like, in shadow, like, the shadow casted by a light, you know, and all this shit, and it's just like, oh, yeah. And then when finally Peter, like, attacks him, he's just attacking him savagely, like, pushing his head through windows, beating the shit out of him.
And, like,
And it's like, just give me a chance, give me a chance.
And
Did you give Ben Parker a chance?
yeah, like the fact that the robber just got fucking mortared.
Yeah.
Like that I don't know why, but that surprised me. I'm like, holy shit.
Well, to be fair, Peter didn't technically kill him.
Okay.
He fell out of the window.
Yeah.
Like, Peter didn't even push him. Well, he might have pushed him. No, he got the gun out of the way, which made the guy stumble, and then his goofy, clumsy ass fell out the window.
Yeah, okay.
So, technically, Peter didn't kill him. He was defending himself, and then the guy fell out a fucking window. But yeah, like, he finds out that the carjacker is the guy who ran away with the money, and it's actually very convenient that the carjacker fell out a window and died, because Peter was unmasked at that point. And so that would have been awkward. But yeah, like, at that point, you know, he comes home. Him and Aunt May try to console each other, you know, like, as they cry. Goes to the funeral. Then they graduate and all this
like
stuff.
a day later, it's like, happy graduation.
Yeah.
Like,
And meanwhile, Norman has killed a bunch of military people. Because apparently they only had one contract.
yeah.
It's like, if we lose this military contract, Oscorp is finished. What? You only have one contract? Are you only making one thing? Bullshit. In that scene alone, I see, like, 5 different things being developed. They can't all be for one contract.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we'd give the money to somebody else. You're the military. I'm sure you have contracts with a bunch of fucking people. Like, why not give it to both?
Yeah, that military man just had a hate boner for Oscorp.
Well, again, I kind of understand Norman's a bastard, but, like, in this one, they at least try to make Norman seem a little bit sympathetic. But yeah, like, he kills the military guys. For some reason, I guess that means that Oscorp is fine now. Like, I
Yeah,
guess
I
that
never-
guy
I
got
d-
replaced and didn't have as much of a hate boner for Norman,
Yeah,
so the contract went through.
Yeah, I didn't understand what I'm like, that just magically solved the problem.
Even though the things that were being developed for the contract were stolen and are now being used by a villain named the Green Goblin. Which, how is Oscorp not being under war crimes investigations for letting that go? Because that technically was military contracted technology that's just been stolen and lost to the ether. But then again, this is a movie based on comic book logic, so clearly nobody thought of that. I'm just saying, at least in today's world, if that shit went missing, good lord would the company be up its own ass trying to figure out who did that before the military came down on them. I mean, shit, the military wanted Apple to give them a universal backdoor key into all iPhones just so that they could look at the text messages of one deceased terrorist to see if there were any more plots. Apple, of course, said, no, that's fucking stupid. If you give it to us, we can get in and then give you the reports. Well, how do we know we can trust you? How do we know we can trust you? If we give you a universal backdoor key, that would be to all of them in the world. It's like, well, we won't use it for evil. Yeah, sure, I believe that. Fucking, how many times have Black Ops tried to kill other members of the government in different countries? Oh, constantly? Well, maybe governments and militaries aren't so black and white. Defund the police.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think back.
But, yeah, so then I forget.
Peter needs
money, but, like, before that, he decides to become Spider-Man in a more refined way and, like, actually start saving people and fighting crime to honor Uncle Ben's memory. And we get this montage of him, like, kind of, you know, becoming a known, like, rumored figure and stuff like this.
like newspapers
Yeah,
and all that stuff.
and like all the pictures that are on the newspapers are really shitty because Peter's not taking them.
Yeah, people talking about Spider-Man and their opinions of
Yeah.
him.
He eventually finds out that they need pictures for Spider-Man, and he goes to the Daily Bugle and meets everyone's favorite J.K. Simmons as Jonah. And Jonah just steals the scene. Grab. Give you 100 for the lot of them. That's a little low. All right, I'll give you 300. Standard fee. It's not. Like, that's not the standard fee. For New York in a major fucking newspaper with a freelance contract, like work for hire contract, and front page pictures, that's really fucking low.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious now.
Even in 2001.
So back in like the 80s and whatnot, my dad, he worked as like a freelance. He did freelance photography.
Yeah.
For like garbage magazines and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I never asked him like how much he got paid for pictures because I have to ask him the story again because I know one of his pictures got like some sort of like major league basketball player in trouble.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. He was supposed to be taking a rest day or something, but he was out clubbing.
So he gets pictures, meets back up with Mary Jane. They've since graduated high school, by the way. The high school portion is very, very, like, they zoom through that shit.
Oh, yeah. Phew.
Probably because everyone in that cast already looks 30.
Yeah.
And so Mary Jane is working as a waitress in a sleazy diner, and tries to lie to Peter. It's like, oh, I just come home from work. I'm going to another audition. Oh, you're living the dream. Hey, waitress Mary Jane, who works at the diner that I also work at. You shorted the customer. If you do that again at your waitress job, you'll no longer be working at the diner that I run. You work at a diner as a waitress. Did I mention?
That was that's basically what that scene was, and that was pretty fucking funny.
Is that your friend that you're lying to about your career? She works as a waitress at a diner.
This one.
That one right there. Eventually, it's found out that Mary Jane is dating Harry, who Peter and Harry are living together in an apartment.
How do you like not
That's
figure that out.
Yeah, that like I'm guessing is being at least partially supported by Norman, because like Harry is also in college.
Yes.
He's working on textbook stuff, and like Norman offers Peter a job, and then Peter, who, you know, from knowing Harry, knows that Norman's kind of a sleazebag, says no, and then Norman passive aggressively to Harry goes like, "Oh, that's good, Peter, making money on your own." Like, so I'm assuming that Norman is kind of financially supporting Harry. But yeah, like then eventually Norman finds out that even though he's brought Oscorp back up and they're on top again, he's going to be essentially fired and let go by the board of directors. So the Green Goblin decides to kill the board of directors.
Yeah.
At World Unity Day, which is apparently a thing, held by Oscorp, has lots of balloons.
I loved like just the shots of New York and the screen. If for anything, I'm like, oh look, it's U.S. Singular. That's dead.
They're dead as fuck. There's Sungari Whiskey. They're still alive.
Oh, I just thought of a terrible. I was thinking like U.S. Singular. That's dead. A few scenes later, Stan Lee.
Ah, he's dead.
Oh no.
J.K. Simmons. Almost. Almost. Not quite yet, but almost.
Oh man.
But like,
Mary Jane, I had to know like what the hell even is that dress?
yeah, it's just a Chinese dress for some reason. I guess because World Unity Day, like that's the reason to put her in a Chinese dress. Whatever. Spider-Man and the Green Goblin meet here.
Oh my god. I love your commentary of
It's Power Rangers.
Yeah, get ready for some Power Rangers shit. Green Goblin.
To be fair, that is gotten from a Nostalgia Critic review of the first Spider-Man movie. He also commented that it looks like some Power Rangers ass shit.
It is so, like it. I loved because if for anything,
You ever have a dream?
If for anything,
what?
it's the fucking like mask helmets that the Green Goblin wears that makes me feel like that. You know, we're
Yeah, because that's not comic accurate at all.
because we're like we got Spider-Man here, but we're gonna get like yellow Spider-Man and then pink Spider-Man coming out. Green Goblin's fun as shit.
Green Goblin
Just
is fun as shit. I used to hate his costume.
Really?
It looks like it doesn't look like it does in the comics. And of course, you know, when you're a kid, you want things to look like they do in the comics, and you don't really understand that might not work either in the presented world of the movie or to a general audience, you know, like. But I'd also seen it in live action. I'd been to Universal Studios. I'd seen parades where the Green Goblin was in. To me, that looked fine. Like, yeah, that's fine. That makes sense to me. I was a kid. Like, and they were trying to get a lot of different ages. So, not to mention it was the early 2000s when, like, you know, body armor and stuff like that was really starting to become a thing in military stuff. Mm-hmm. They said that the reason that they were even making the glider was a military contract, so I guess it makes a little bit more sense for it to be a converted military suit. I'm gonna guess that he made that mask later. Like, I don't think that they were making the goblin mask for the military. Although I guess they could. They paint, like, snarling wolves on helicopters. Airwolf. But yeah, do you know what the Green Goblin is supposed to look like?
I do not.
Okay, let me show you that. Here's what he's supposed to look like.
Oh, that is very different.
Yeah, like they didn't even leave any of the purple that's on his comic book, like, self at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot more traditional goblin-y in the comics, which I actually think is really interesting because it shows when he's under the influence of the goblins. I'm like, Norman's always been kind of crazy, but he was like narcissist crazy, or for lack of a better term, but a better analogy for the modern day, Trump crazy.
Oh.
Narcissistic, antisocial, you know, essentially a narcissistic sociopath, but like a bad sociopath. There are some good sociopaths who like understand that they're a sociopath and get help. Trump is not that. But like, yeah, and in it, like that's a mask that like moves and has like fake teeth to make it look like goblin teeth and all that shit. It's very fucking crazy. And I love that costume. A lot of people are like, oh, it's too silly. No, that's the point.
Green Goblin is silly as hell from what I've seen.
Yeah.
And I love it. Green Goblin 1 from MCU 1.
Well, they have to introduce Norman first, and I'm gonna guess that it wouldn't be until MCU Peter enters college, because I'm guessing, because right now, Harry Osborn is nowhere in the picture.
Yeah.
Peter doesn't know Harry, at least as far as we've seen, and we don't want something in Amazing Spider-Man where in the second movie it's just like, oh, hello, my best friend since childhood, Harry Osborn, who I never mentioned in the first movie. How are you? You were in Europe, weren't you? Oh, always disappear into Europe for 10 years.
Oof.
Yeah, no. So I'm gonna guess that they would probably, if they get to the point where Tom Holland, Peter Parker enters college, which I'm pretty sure, like, Tom Holland is a fully grown adult, isn't he?
Yes.
And he still looks very much high schooler.
Yeah.
So eventually it's gonna be hard to see him out of high school.
Well, I mean, a college freshman still kind of have a baby. Some of them still have a bit of a baby face to them.
Yeah, and I think, like, what is he? He's in his, like, early to mid-20s, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think he just hit 20 during Far From Home? No. From Homecoming, maybe.
How old is Tom Holland?
But, so I'm sure he probably will...
He's 24 years old.
24. He's younger than me.
Yeah.
Or is he? Wait, how old am I?
You are...
I'm 24.
No,
25?
you're 25.
How the fuck old am I? No.
You're 25.
I don't think so. This is actually a real question, by the way, audience. I commonly forget how old I am. Because I just don't think about it.
You're a year and a half apart from me. I'm 26 right now. I turn 27 in a month. So we're almost at that year and a half point.
Okay. So I'm 25. Okay, so he's a year younger than me, if that's true.
God, trust me, I'm good at this shit.
I don't... Well, because the thing is, I almost always assume that I'm a year older than I actually am. So the fact that I said 25 first makes me think that I'm actually 24 and fucking it up again.
Yeah, no, you got it right.
Okay. But, yeah, so he's a year younger than me. I still look pretty fucking similar to how I looked in high school.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't have proof that I can show CAD. I don't have a yearbook on me right now. But I think basically since junior year, I've basically looked very similar. I think I have, like, one or two more creases, like, on this side of... over my left eyebrow, I kind of have a permanent furrow crease that just because of the way my face relaxes. I don't think I have crow's feet yet or anything like that. The only thing is I look less fat.
Same.
I am slightly less fat, but I'm not nearly as less fat as I look. I'm trying to think of what else happens. So we have the Unity Day thing. Then there's a bit more stuff with Peter that I don't care about, really. Then Green Goblin attacks the Daily Bugle. Mm-hmm. And Spider-Man gets knocked out by sleeping gas by the Green Goblin, wakes up at night, meaning hours have passed while he was unconscious, and Green Goblin just didn't take off the mask.
Yeah,
Weird.
I was wondering that. Like, why wouldn't he have done that?
Because he's crazy.
Is this like some unspoken, like, superhero, supervillain, like...
Because he's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know.
And again, it is supposed to be in, like, a campy comic book world.
Okay.
You know? And, like, you know, it's like when Joker has Batman held captive, why the fuck doesn't he take off the mask? Of course, nowadays they actually have a reason. It's because Joker doesn't give a fuck. Like, nowadays they'd explain it where if somebody tried to tell him who Batman was, he'd probably shoot him. Oh yeah, Spider-Man.
What?
We're talking about Spider-Man.
Oh my god, I'm so exhausted. What are we even talking about?
So Thanksgiving happens. And,
Worst Thanksgiving ever.
yeah. But, like,
Oof.
kind of an interesting back and forth between Norman and Peter, where Norman finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. Because before that, Green Goblin and Spider-Man had tangoed in a burning building where Green Goblin was disguising himself as an old maid.
Oh, that was so fucking funny. That was... I love Green Goblin.
What about my office, Spider-Man? Are you in or out? You're the one who's out, Gobby. Out of your mind. He gets a wound on his arm, which later Aunt May notices that Peter's bleeding through his shirt because Peter didn't have time or the stuff to bandage it, I guess. And Norman recognizes it and is just like, I gotta go. And then, like, Harry is like, whoa, Dad, where the hell are you going? Like, what about Mary Jane and all that stuff? Oh, fuck Mary Jane. She's just a bimbo or all that shit. And then MJ, of course, walks out from that because she's upset. Rightfully so. Although she is nice enough to say, like, I'm sorry, Aunt May. Like, it's like, I'm sorry, Aunt May, you don't deserve this. Thank you for making the turkey, at least. I'm sorry I didn't get to taste it. Give me some leftovers. All right, I'm supposed to exit the scene now. Bye. And I like that Aunt May tells Harry off too, because like Harry gets defensive because it's his dad. It's like oh, that man is my father. I wish I could be half the man he is, and you should respect that. It's like Harry Osborn. I'm like, yeah, Aunt May, you don't give a shit. You'll tell people off. That's what I love about you. I love Aunt May. Like, when Aunt May is written well, which I'm still on the fence about MCU Aunt May. I like that she's younger because it makes more sense because she's about the same age as, a high schooler mom would be. And since she's supposed to be Peter's mom's sister.
Yeah. So
Norman goes back home and is like, oh, it's Peter. I can't kill Peter. Yes, you can, Norman. I'm on a chair. I'm a mask on a chair. They made an action figure of me.
You said that, like, before he said that, I'm like, that's just some silly shit Scott's saying. And then he actually said it. I'm like...
Yeah, I had an action figure that was Norman Osborn, the chair, and the goblin mask. It was the goblin mask on the chair. And if you press the button, it said, the heart, Norman. Go for the heart. I loved that thing. I don't know what happened to it. It might still be in a bag of action figures, honestly. I hope it is. I'll need to check for that. I hope it's there. Anyway.
Chair.
I also have a Venom action figure that's from the third movie, and it came with a little vial of black slime that was supposed to be the symbiote, and you were supposed to like pour it on the Venom action figure to make him all symbiote-y and slimy. I didn't do that. I just like to pretend that I have the Venom symbiote and that I'm keeping it from infecting anybody else and causing terror.
Scott's a hero.
I try. There was also a Sandman action figure I had that's in the same line that came with like a little putty clump that looked like sand. And I'm like, I've got Venom and Sandman captured. And they're never getting out. And of course, like, I would just leave them out if friends were visiting for the first time, and they'd be like, what's this? And open it, and like the symbiote like would stick to the lid, and I'm like, no, put it back! You're gonna let him free! Of course, they'd never get it, and they'd just be like, what are you talking about, Spaz?
Oh.
I'm like, it's Venom, and it's... let's just play Smash.
Poor Seth.
But, yeah, so Norman decides to go for the heart. And Aunt May is praying, and, like, Green Goblin attacks and is just like, finish it! Deliver us! Finish it! From evil!
Oh.
And,
Poor Aunt May.
yeah, and Peter runs in, like, it cuts to the hospital. Peter runs into the room and it's like, oh, that's my aunt. And it's like, what's wrong with her? Is she gonna be okay? Yeah, she'll be fine. We need you to get out of here right now. And he overhears Aunt May screaming, those eyes, those horrible yellow eyes. And it's like, yellow eyes? The Green Goblin mask has yellow eyes. I mean, I've seen the eyes under the mask and they're not yellow, but the Green Goblin eyes on the mask are yellow. It might have been the Green Goblin. That means he knows who I am. Oh no.
Yeah-oh. More guilt, more guilt, more
Yeah.
guilt.
So he eventually tries to call Mary Jane, and doesn't reach her. And as he's like leaving a message, the phone picks up and it's like, hello, MJ? Can Spider-Man come out to play? You know, and he's like, starts to suit up, and apparently there was nobody else in that hallway.
Yeah, apparently.
That's another thing. Like he starts running through a crowd at the Unity Day scene and opens the thing in the
Yeah,
Spider-Man suit,
like,
and
no
nobody's like,
one saw
"Oh, hey, that guy's Spider-Man."
I know, right?
I mean, I know a lot was happening, but come on, it was a festival in New York. There had to be millions of people. Not one of them got that and, you know, took a picture on their Motorola Razr. Those were around in 2001, right?
I don't know.
Maybe not.
Probably not.
BlackBerry?
Maybe.
I don't know. When was the Motorola Razr?
Motorola Razor. Okay.
But yeah, so he goes like to I think it's the Queensboro Bridge, because even though the female lead is Mary Jane, they of course have to make a reference to Gwen Stacy off the bridge. Even in the fucking Marvel movies, they still make a fucking reference to Gwen Stacy off the bridge. Like in this time, it's MJ being saved by Peter in the elevator of the Washington Monument. But still, he has to save a girl he likes, or will like, from falling by using a web. It's always Gwen Stacy off the bridge. Always. Even when they don't put something about Gwen Stacy off the bridge, like in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, they will still, as he's jumping around at the end of that movie, it slows down as he's like, as him and that bridge are in the same shot, and in the very background of the music, you hear the sound that they've been using for his spider sense. It's like, something's gonna bad happen in that bridge, even though they didn't use that bridge when they killed Gwen Stacy off the bridge in the second movie, and instead dropped her through a clock tower, where they literally had the CGI web create a hand that reached out for her. That was dumb.
Also, no one would have been taking pictures of Spider-Man with their Motorola laser until 2004.
Oh. So we'll look out for that in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he makes it to the bridge, and Goblin has Mary Jane on one hand, and on the other hand he has the cable for a cable car full of children, and he drops them both, and there's actually a pretty cool scene where two different things are reflected in Spider-Man's eyes. Mm-hmm. I remember I had a trading card of that, and it was just called The Hero's Choice. Mm-hmm. And it's just, on one hand it's Mary Jane, and on the other hand it's, you know, the car full of kids, and he goes for Mary Jane, you know, slings a web, catches her, just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. But then grabs the cable car in the other hand after, like, getting her onto his back, and is like, hey, you're gonna need to drop to, you know, the thing. I can't. Yes, you can. I can't. Yes, you can. I can't. Yes, you can. Okay. And then they're fighting while he's trying to hold the cable car, knocks him off, loses the thing, grabs it back, does this. And of course, because this was made in 2001, after the 9/11 attacks, there's a scene where it's like, oh, hey, Spider-Man's a New Yorker, and he's saved other New Yorkers, kind of like firefighters did in 9/11. So guess what? We, as New York, after 9/11, have all come together as a group because of 9/11 and are gonna throw trash at you because we're all New Yorkers. I know that's a very cynical view, but come on. Like, that's why.
It was a product of the time.
That's why. You think that anybody gives a fuck about Spider-Man? No. Even in the movie, he's been criminalized at this point.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Jonah thinks that he was part of the attack on the Daily Bugle. The Daily Bugle says that, you know, there's a fucking reward out. Cops are like, I'm gonna arrest you if you come back down. Well, I'm not gonna come back down. Mm-hmm. Like, he is a criminal. The only reason that they would have to attack him is because he's supposedly, you know, holding the children in the cable car. But, like, even then, sure, there's a lot of people who wouldn't understand that situation. And also, let's be honest, they're jaded as fuck New Yorkers. They'd be walking. I gotta get to my 9 to 5. You mess with one New Yorker, you mess with one New Yorker. Out of here. I joke, New York. I don't joke. I joke.
I've never been to New York. I can't judge.
Yeah, I haven't been. But I do want to know, is the Broadway musical of Spider-Man offensive to you guys? Because that's the hero that you guys adopted. He's the one in the Macy's Day Parade. Like, all of the other Marvel heroes, it's just like, oh, they're Marvel heroes. But a lot of people are like, oh, Spider-Man's New York's hero. So, like, is the fact that Turn Off the Dark is such a fucking travesty, is that offensive to you? Like, is that like a bad word? the Broadway Spider-Man musical? Because, woof. That's a thing.
Yeah, I remember you told me about it. It's real.
Oof.
Oh my god. But yeah, Spider-Man does some bullshit and it's like, fuck the hero's choice. I'm gonna do both.
Mm-hmm. He's gonna do both. And he gets them onto a barge and then starts fighting Goblin for real. But Goblin's kicking his ass. Just absolutely kicking his ass. So many bricks. Goes through bricks, goes through glass, goes through bricks, goes through glass, goes through bricks, and then goes through some bricks for a bit of a change. And just is getting his ass handed to him. But then Green Goblin is like, I'm going to kill Mary Jane slowly this time. And the power of love and anime and friendship makes the tables turn. And suddenly Spider-Man is kicking the shit out of Green Goblin to the point where, to try to, you know, get the upper hand, Green Goblin, you know, like, starts acting like Norman again. It's like, oh, thank God for you, Peter. It's like, Norman, you killed those people. I didn't kill them. I had nothing to do with it. The Goblin killed them. Please don't let him take me again. Like, all that shit. And then, like, it's like, I've been like a father to you, which is a very presumptuous thing to say. You know, that is, you don't usually say, I'm like a father to you. You usually have other people say, you're like a father to me. And it's usually a rookie telling that to the veteran cop right before they get shotgunned to death.
Ooh.
You know? Or in Kung Fu, you're like a brother to me. And no, I think he does say you're like a father to me, even though they're both the same age. Not Kung Fu, Kung Fury. It's a great movie. Love that movie. It's like 20 minutes long.
What?
And so he tries to trick Peter, but Peter, you know, to bring it all full circle, is like, I already have a father, which the argument he has with Uncle Ben is like, you're not my dad. So it's like, I have a dad. It's Ben Parker. And then Goblin drops the facade, is like, well, then Godspeed, Spider-Man. But Spider-Man's Spider Sense goes off, and as the glider goes in to stab him in the back, Peter jumps out of the way, and it stabs Norman.
Very unfortunate.
But
Oof.
Willem goes out with one last gag, because it, like, shows it zooming in at him at multiple different angles, and then just zooms in on his face, and everything's quiet, and he just goes, oh.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Just, oh.
Yeah.
That's so funny. It's like it's like when you in Hitman 2, you can kill somebody with a robot test, and like this guy has made no like has no problems with swearing in his other dialogue, but his last words are "oh cripes." It's just there's something so funny about that. About how just oh. But then with his dying words, Norman says, "Don't tell Harry," and Peter brings Norman's body back, still in the goblin suit, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So how Harry didn't put 2 to 2 together, like even if he still blamed Spider-Man for his dad's death, it's like, oh, my dad was the Green Goblin and was a crazy murder man.
I have mixed feelings about this.
Yeah, I mean, I still might go for revenge, but also, woof. But yeah, like, he thinks that Spider-Man killed his dad. Peter clearly is an idiot in this scene because I would have immediately been like, oh, the Green Goblin got him. Like, Goblin got him. I couldn't save him in time. I'm sorry. You know, like, I'm sorry. I tried. Bye. Wee.
Yeah, but Peter though.
Yeah, Peter's an idiot. Also, I guess you could possibly say that maybe he didn't want Harry to recognize his voice, but also, why? Like, Norman found out who Peter was. How do you know that Harry doesn't know? Like, you know, you don't know what Norman tells Harry. Fuck it. Say, yeah, Harry, he attacked me. He was trying to kill me and Mary Jane and a fucking cable car full of kids. By the way, I'm Spider-Man. All right? Just let me have the W on this. I'm already kind of butthurt. And also, it's not like I wanted him dead, but he killed himself with his own glider. Like, I just didn't stop it because I was leaping out of the way of the glider at the time. It's a whole thing. I'll explain it later over coffee, all right? Good night. Sorry about your dad. You know, and that's why I'll always respect Jaime Reyes as the Blue Beetle, because literally as soon as he got the powers, the second that he got back home, he was just like, hey, mom, dad, little sister, I'm the Blue Beetle. What are you going to do? There's a scarab fused to my back. It's in my spine. Not really much I can do about it. Batman said he'd train me. But yeah, and then it ends with a funeral where, of course, everybody has all black clothing and all black umbrellas. Not a single colored umbrella in the bunch. I've been to funerals in the rain. There's always at least one colorful umbrella. Do you think people just have funerary umbrellas? I don't know. Maybe in big cities, like, funeral homes pass them out if it's raining. I don't know. Just it's something that after being in like film editing classes, I'm just like, wait a minute. What the fuck? How is it's all the same model of umbrella too. This is very coordinated for a day of mourning. Like man, they're really all together in their head right now for people who are sad.
And, you know, at the funeral, Mary Jane is apparently in love with Peter now.
Yeah. And it kind of implies that after she kisses him, like she holds her hand to her lips and like then looks back at Peter with a look of realization as if she's figured out, oh, I kissed Spider-Man, then I kissed Peter, and both of those kisses felt the same, which is bullshit because one of them was upside down. But like, you know, like, oh, he's Spider-Man and that's why he's rejecting me. No. Not gonna be what's revealed. At all. You know, I don't think it's a huge spoiler to say by Spider-Man 2, she's still fucking whee!
But, yeah, that surprise. We ended the movie and I'm like, I liked this a lot more than I thought I was going to. Because I thought, like, pre-MCU, like, superhero movie was gonna be super cringy. And
No, you're thinking of Fantastic Four.
I don't know anything about Fantastic
Or
Four.
Daredevil.
Never seen.
Or Hulk.
It's just, I don't know.
Or Punisher.
I don't have any,
Or
like...
Nick Fury.
I don't have any like back reference. I just assumed. I don't know, and I don't know where I got it from.
Or Superman 4: Quest for Peace. Or Batman and Robin. Batman Forever. Steel, starring Shaquille O'Neal.
But yeah, I think I'm excited to go into the second one. Maybe a little less so. And I'm like, oh damn, Green Goblin's dead. He
Yeah.
was fun.
Oh, don't worry. We have a more than worthy replacement.
Ooh, do we?
Oh, yes. Basically, every single villain that the Sam Raimi movies have, I really want to see an MCU interpretation of. But I know if we ever get them, it ain't gonna be for a fucking while, because there's a reason that they didn't use him in Amazing Spider-Man. There's a reason that they didn't... Well, Amazing Spider-Man 2 kind of tried to use Green Goblin. But anyway, there's a reason they haven't. They've been more sticking with, like, the Vulture, Mysterio, you know, like, the Tinkerer, Shocker. You know, like, that kind of thing. I think that's it from us. What did you think overall?
I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, and I can't wait for the second one. I'm trying to...
What do you think of Tobey Maguire?
I was about to say...
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, I like...
Do you like him better as Peter or as Spider-Man?
like him better as Spider-Man.
Okay. I guess we'll see from there. We've got another series of movies started now.
Yeah.
That's the Batman movies, the Spider-Man movies, the Indiana Jones movies.
Ooh, yeah, I almost forgot for a hot second we still got those to go through.
We've got the Batman series and the Dragon Ball series. Is there any other ongoing stuff that we've got now? We're starting to get a little bit of a menagerie to revisit now and then. I don't know what this voice is.
I don't know. I would literally have to go back through the episodes to be like, oh yeah, doesn't that have a sequel?
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.